I'm Jeff Yager. I'm joined here today with,
I'm Jordan. And I'm Riley.
and I'm here to ask him a couple questions. Let's start with your shirt here. So you're both type 1 diabetics, and you have a shirt indicating diabetics with T1. Can you describe exactly what is meant by that?
Yeah, sure. So our shirt, obviously, we're diabetics, but the reason we have the T and the 1 in blue and also capitalized is we are type 1 diabetics, which kind of, we're trying to differentiate between type 2, which is also it's a more common, I guess, type of diabetes in the world compared to type 1. It's just more common in people, and we're just trying to determine, I don't know, or not the better type, but like, it's just different.
It's just different?
We're just trying to overall, because type 2 also has to do with not exactly an autoimmune disorder like type 1, but an insulin resistance, and it's most common when you eat too much carbs or like you've eaten a lot of sugars, and normally you're either put on an insulin pill or you're put on a diet, versus us where we have to take insulin shots and inject ourselves to correct for eating carbs.
So as type 1 diabetics, which I think of as often called juvenile diabetes as well, because it's typically an autoimmune response that happens when you're a young child at some point. I mean, as type 1 diabetics, you obviously know quite a few other type 1 diabetics. In fact, you girls met at diabetes camp, right? Do you know any type 2 diabetics?
Well, we've definitely heard of them. Usually when I introduce myself to other people, typically at school or like a big social gathering, I tell people that I'm diabetic, and I usually don't say I'm type 1 first, but then the people that I'm talking to, they say that their grandparents or typically like a relative is type 2 diabetic. So I've heard many things about it, but I've rarely met type 2s. But when I do, we do share some common situations that we're kind of put in, but yet again, it's also kind of different since we have to bolus for every single meal, but they kind of have a little bit more control due to the fact that their pancreas still does have some kind of form of it still working.
Yeah, I know my uncle has either pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, and I know he is starting to exercise more in order to I guess get his weight under control, which has an effect on type 2 diabetes.
So in a sense, your shirt is really there to highlight something that I would say a lot of the general public doesn't know, which is as type 1 diabetics, you often get mistaken for just the general term diabetes, and more people have a familiarity with type 2 because of it, like you said, it's more common throughout the world, and it's something that is more related to as you get older. So a lot of people as they get older, because have pancreas issues which cause either pre-diabetes or type 2 type diabetic problems in a huge fraction of adults, especially aging adults. But this is really to highlight that unlike that, which has a lot to do with how they lived their life, how they dieted, how they exercised, etc. In other words, type 2 has some parts that are preventable in nature or even reversible that have a lot to do with your life and dietary choices that you made. But type 1 diabetes has nothing to do with any choices. You didn't choose to have an autoimmune response that killed off the islet cells in your pancreas. This is something that they don't even understand what causes it. But your bodies don't produce insulin at all. While, like you said, type 2 diabetics often do, or they have something going on with it's still a pancreas insulin-related disease, but there's a lot different cause and effects related to this disease, right? And so this really T1 is to highlight. And what is the blue in color to indicate?
It's kind of just like the world symbol, I guess, for diabetes in general. It's not just type type 1, it's for every type of diabetes. It's kind of labeled, I guess the logo for worldwide is a blue circle. So we kind of just incorporated that color within it. And yeah, that's kind of just the world label for diabetes in general.
I think I know that. I have one. You know, in the back of your shirt, like.
This is
Yeah. On the back of our shirt, we have our logo, which we also have displayed on our website. But it has the blue circle for the world symbol of diabetes, and then it has the red blood drop, which is an iconic symbol of just type 1 diabetics. For the most part, you see it with things like JDRF and ADA, especially have the hand with the blood.
Right. And so, would you say, as a type 1 diabetic, that you, often getting confused for type 2 diabetes? Is this, something that bothers you over? I mean, that's the indication I get. Is this something that, is kind of a sense of animosity, or?
I'd say there's a little bit of bothersome. It's always nice to have an opportunity to educate people about diabetes and the different types, because there's definitely a lot of differences between them. But it does get bothersome after a while, being confused with like more of diabetics where, oh, you might have eaten like a little bit too much sugar, or like a lifestyle change versus an autoimmune disorder. Because you get a lot of comments like, oh, did you eat too much sugar? Or, oh, my grandma has that. And it'd just be nice to have
You don't
your
like to be
disease.
compared to people's grandmother? Is that what you're saying?
It's definitely just like a difference that'd be nice for the public to know the difference, instead of just assuming type 2 is what you have. Because there's a difference on how you treat it, and it just like, I guess, affects people's perception of you.
Well, like you said, if they don't know the difference, they can often assume diabetic meant that you had some, it's choices you made with your diet or health that has caused this disease, versus something, if they understood better, they would realize that this is something that was an autoimmune response that you never asked for, and it's something that happened to you that now you have to live with it. And it's something you can't just reverse at the moment. Like, there is no medical procedure to restore a pancreas, and even if there was, your body still has the autoimmune response to kill it off anyway. So really, a lot of your efforts are being put into really educating people about the different types of diabetes and how T1 or type 1 diabetes differs from just general diabetes found in adults.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're aiming towards.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my questions today, and I look forward to seeing where you guys go as far as creating content to educate the general public on this in the future.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.